Good day, folks. Everything new under the sun. I want to share a few different things today, and I hope it's interesting to you. I'm going to talk about the Arabs and Ishmael and a biblical scripture which seems to kind of encapsulate what the Arabs are, how they act in this day and age, and we know it actually from the book of Genesis. So we'll get to that in a second, but first I want to make a couple of comments here about things that are interesting here. Biden authorizes Ukraine to use U.S. long-range missiles to strike inside Russia. This after the election is done. Trump has been elected, and he seems to be kicking it up a notch and looking for all-out war. Now, it would be the Democrats and the deep state's wish that World War III started in a sort of a way, because then they would be able to declare martial law, and for continuity of government, they would put everything on pause, and Biden and whomever is working with him would be in power as long as we were in World War III, effectively. And so that's, I guess, an option. Is that legal now that Trump is officially voted in as president? I don't know how that would play out, but they could see that. They know that Trump has already been talking about peace. And by the way, the left has no interest in peace, and that's why they're kicking this up a notch. They're not waiting for Trump to talk to Putin or to come to some agreement, maybe a land for peace like they try and push Israel into all the time. They're not waiting for that. They are escalating the war, which is fascinating, and that's a tell. That's a sign. That's the left showing their hand, the Democrats showing their hand. This is, again, a story of, and this is Israel365news.com, divine providence. Hezbollah rocket hits synagogue on Shabbat after prayer services. So I've showed you stories where the Iranians think that Israel has some magic, and they're playing with magic and devils and these sorts of things. And no, it is actually divine providence. I think it actually is God in many ways and many times protecting the Jews, protecting even the people of Israel, even if they're not Jews. And you see these sorts of miracles happen where a timing is slightly off, or rockets fall where you don't expect them to into more safe areas. And that is one way that you can see God providing for and watching over the Jewish people. Because he loves the Jewish people. He loves all people. But Jerusalem and Israel is a land specifically for them. And it has always been. And so he was looking out for them. Now, there will come a time when they are overwhelmed, and they will call upon his name whom they've pierced. And he will come back and, in spectacular shock and awe fashion, will actually protect them. But that's not yet. But you see these little things, these little glimpses of what appear to be miracles. And even Israel's enemies, neighbors, believe that Israel has some sort of superpower, some supernatural thing, some demons and devils helping them, or some black magic or whatever it may be. And they're partially right. They do, because that is actually God helping them. So the sooner they come to that understanding, the better. This is an article from HarbingersDaily.com. Trump cabinet nominee once told Israelis with U.S. support a rebuilt Jewish temple is not far-fetched. So we've spoken about this before. This is this Hegseth particular guy. Will he get into the Donald Trump administration? Yet to be seen, but he's been nominated at least. And Trump is going fast with that. But just a little more background here. Speaking before the Arutz Sheva conference in Jerusalem, Hegseth referenced his earlier visit to the Temple Mount and how the experience reminded him of Israel's right to reestablish the location's Jewish roots. As you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. So again, looking at the supernatural, commenting and describing the supernatural, he explained, it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. 1917 was a miracle. 1948, when Israel became a nation, was a miracle. 1967 was a miracle. 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as capital, was a miracle. And there's no reason why a miracle of the reestablishment of the temple, the third temple, on the Temple Mount is not possible, he told the audience. I don't know how it would happen. You don't know how it would happen. But I know that it could happen. So interesting that this leading guy in the Trump administration potentially is really pushing and seeking and talking positively and bringing out into the mainstream media news the idea of the third temple in Israel. Now again, for the Jews, what they need is Jesus Christ. But what they believe is coming is the third temple, and they believe that they're going to have the sacrifices again. They're going to accept the Antichrist, by the way. They're going to think he is the Messiah because they are allowed at some point to rebuild the third temple, probably after World War III almost starts, and I think that's very soon. And they will see this guy as their savior because he'll bring peace to the world. And again, he'll let them start sacrifices again. But he will be a false Christ, an Antichrist. I read that story in the last video, or whatever, second last video, about one of the archbishops calling the Pope the very antichristic, or antichrist-like, if you will. So that's interesting. And could he be the false prophet? I don't know. It's something we need to watch for, right? In his actions and his words, it seems that he is not sticking to the Bible, the Word. He seems to be making space for the idea that there's several roads that lead you to God, and the God that we worship of all three monotheistic religions, all three, he says that that God is the same, and in fact, it's not the same God, obviously. This is interesting here. This is dailysignal.com. Trump can fire 2.9 million federal workers. And I don't know why no one has really put two and two together. But, if the excuse to bring illegals in, and this is the excuse in Canada, by the way, because the excuse is that they need them for the job market, for the labor market. We need more workers. Well, if Trump can go in with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and fire 2.9 million federal workers, well, they're going to be hopping into the employment pool, aren't they? They're going to be looking for jobs. So if you deport a whole bunch of illegal immigrants, which Canada could do as well, you're going to have them replaced by potentially 2.93 million federal workers who are no longer needed, who make up the massive bureaucracy and huge tax-based waste of the federal government. And all of a sudden, you don't have an employment issue anymore. So that's interesting. I'll end with this. I don't know if you've seen this, but Palestinian protests where fights are breaking out in the UK, in Canada. Someone was walking by with a Canadian flag, and the Palestinians, they tore it out of his hand. And in other cases, they're burning the Canadian flag. They're doing this across the U.S. too, with U.S. flags. They're just a violent people, the Palestinians themselves. And the Palestinians are Arabs. And I have this. So there's this verse in Genesis chapter 16, which talks about Ishmael. And Ishmael is the father, if you will. Arabs are in the line of Ishmael. And it says, so this is a gotquestions.com. Who are the descendants of Ishmael? Gotquestions.org. And it goes through the detail of saying it's Sarah's maidservant Hagar, who Abraham had a baby with, and that baby was Ishmael. That was not God's intention, but those people were multiplied anyways because God kept his promise. But I'll sum this up here. You can read this article if you want. But it says the descendants of Ishmael became known as Arabs. Basically means nomads. So the descendants of Ishmael are Arabs. Ishmael comes from the book of Genesis, the beginnings. The name means the beginnings. So you got to go back to Genesis to see what's happening and why it's happening. Why are nations fighting? Go back to Genesis. Why are people groups and ethnicities fighting? Go back to Genesis. And you can see it here too. And Genesis chapter 16, by the way, speaks of Ishmael, and you can deduce that it also speaks about the descendants of Ishmael, which are the Arabs, right? So here is Genesis chapter 16, verse 12. And he, Ishmael, will be as a wild ass among men. His hand will be against every man, and every man against him. And he will live to the east and on the borders of all his kinsmen. And so you look at the riots and the anger, and you look at these things and you say, don't these people have jobs? Don't they have homes to go to? Don't they have things to do? Yet in countries across the world, cities across the world, they're rioting and just destroying things, and the police aren't going after them. And they're just, they're burning Canadian flags and American flags, and they're just rioting everywhere. They're just wild. And they're wild in Israel too. And this is a taste of what Israel's dealing with. These are the descendants of Ishmael. And they're even against each other, by the way. It says his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. It's a kind of a warring, wild nation or ethnicity. This is in their DNA. This is what the Bible describes, and this is Ishmael is where they come from. So, on the one hand, don't be surprised, but on the other hand, recognize, where these things come from, because it's important to know your history, and that the Bible provides the answers even to crazy questions like, why are these people out here riding in the streets? What gives them that energy? What gives them that faith and that zeal to battle like that? Why don't they just go to their everyday lives, enjoy their lives with their family and friends, do hobbies, go out golfing? Why are they rioting? And it comes back to the Bible every time, and to history every time. And there's your answer for Ishmael and the Arabs. Hey, I didn't write it. Don't blame me. Go read the Bible. Talk to God about that one. But certainly the descendants of Ishmael are the Arabs. And so I think this would describe them. And I think you would have to agree. So I hope that was interesting. I'll leave there, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.